Marketer of the Day, episode 649. Convert more prospects into profitable clients with phone sales doctor Chris Mullins.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We're chatting with Chris Mullins, and Chris Mullins has a platform called Law Firm Conversions, which is a total business solution that transforms how law firms and call centers train, coach, hire, and retain intake specialists. And Chris is going to tell us all about what she has going on and what makes her special. So, Chris, glad to be talking to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Robert. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the Marketer of the Day podcast.
I am glad to have you on. So, what has been your focus lately? What has been getting you excited to roll out of bed in the morning? What has been just getting you charged up, jazzed up, turned on, all that stuff?
So I would say the biggest thing that gets me charged up and jazzed up is the actual teaching moment. So when I'm actually being a teacher with a student, and our students are any business. We work with law firms, and we work with the medical industry or auto dealerships or casinos or any kind of business at all that does marketing to get leads to opt into their sales funnel. And we coach people to improve their telephone sales skills. So they're our students. And when I get to do the coaching, I'm a teacher. And as I'm teaching the student to improve their telephone sales skills based on relationships and communications, that's when I get jazzed up. It's the raw, actual teaching moment that really, really jazzes me up more than the running of the business and the back office stuff.
Yeah, you add value. You get people to hone their skills. They go from being really nervous to being confident once they get a handle on some of this phone closing stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every student that we've ever had, and we've been doing this for 25 years now. I'm known as the phone sales doctor, and every student has to embrace the concept of the S word sales and the S word script. And most students, they just don't like those words. They don't like the idea that they're really, doing sales, and they don't like the idea that they have to use scripts. So we have to initially work with helping them get through those barriers of resistance.
Okay, great. So you're the phone sales doctor, and people hate at first sales, and they hate scripts. And what is the reason why the phone sales specifically became your area of focus?
Before I started my business 25 years ago, I was in the newspaper industry for 10 years. And I started out in that industry as a receptionist, and then was promoted to the advertising department, which was a small call center handling inbound sales calls from prospective advertisers and making outbound sales calls to prospective advertisers, and also taking customer phone calls. So I just started in the phone business and stayed in the phone business, and got promoted over the years within the newspaper industry as a publisher of 21 newspapers, but always had an expertise in telephone sales, inbound and outbound, and in call centers, and even, just large departments of customer service team members.
Awesome. So you went from point A to point B, and along the way, you realized that was where you really shined.
Yeah, I mean, after doing the newspapers for 10 years, I got to be really popular and a great reputation, and other newspapers tried to get me to leave one newspaper to go to their paper, and that wasn't ethical. So one day I said, you know what, I'm just going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to quit the newspaper business, and I'm going to start my own business. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have a blueprint. I didn't have the capital. It's not the way I recommend you do it, but I did do it cold turkey. And because of my background in newspapers, I started with working in the newspaper, with newspapers as clients, but my focus was sales, face-to-face sales, nose-to-nose, toe-to-toe, but also telephone sales. That was the focus area because that was my area of expertise.
Awesome. So, with all this phone stuff, like I don't know what you've been hearing people say lately as far as their hesitations and their objections, but you hear about how, especially in this day and age, where if people are on the phone with you, they're serious, right? In this day and age of people being afraid to check their voicemail and wanting to use texting or an app or a website, if you do that inbound phone calling and someone calls you wanting something, they're super qualified, super serious. At least that's what I've been hearing.
So, I explain that. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So, like you hear the stereotype about how like a lot of the young people, the millennials, they're afraid to use the phone, or when the phone rings, some people say, "Oh well, I'm used to someone calling me during dinner time. I'm used to that darn telemarketer." So it seems like if people are on the phone these days, then they're serious about buying. They have a budget. They're a real business owner, as opposed to someone just messing around, just dabbling.
Yeah, well, I mean, if someone is calling a business, they're calling because they're ready to make a buying decision, regardless of the type of business. They're ready to buy, and so the person on the other end of the phone, regardless of the title that you give that person, inbound sales or customer service or inside sales, they need to be in the state of readiness to convert that prospect into a client.
And what sort of tools do they need to be at that state of readiness? I know that you mentioned like the sales script, and then I see on your bio you have this thing called a mystery call. So if someone out there is saying, I know that having this phone setup is important, having the ability to answer inbound calls is important, but where do I start? And maybe people are thinking, well, this idea of a script sounds really overwhelming because aren't there a million different things someone might call and ask me?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that you need to do is come up with some screening questions or qualifying questions. So set aside some time and sit down and think about the types of questions that you and your business know that you need to ask a prospect in order to be able to qualify them for the right service and product. And every business knows what those questions are, but what they need to do is schedule time to sit down and make a list of what those questions are. And that will become your qualifying questions. And nothing is set in stone. You can test everything. Maybe the qualifying questions will change over time because, you can have them be shorter or you didn't have the right questions. But that's how you would begin. And then you would have a relationship sales conversion script built around those qualifying questions, which are standard questions. And the relationship sales conversion script is what helps we'll call them the salesperson, stay focused on conversion and relationships and communications, and in some cases, empathy. But I would say begin with your qualifying questions.
And I feel like I have somewhat of a handle on what a qualifying question is, but do you mind maybe listing a couple of examples or telling us like how you would arrive on some of these qualifying questions? That way we fully understand.
Well, you have to know like your service and your product and who is your ideal client, who's your ideal customer. So you already know that, and just think about your ideal customer. Maybe think about customers in specific customers, and think about what makes them an ideal customer or an ideal client, and make a list of all those things that make them the perfect customer and client. And those that's how you can begin to ask questions to qualify if this person is going to be the right customer or client for you.
So when I hear that answer, I'm thinking, so this ideal customer client, maybe we're thinking of what we're looking for specific problems they have or specific services they might need or things like that.
Yeah, and one thing is to first you want to listen to what they say to you when they call. So they might be asking you a price for something, but what you want to do is control the call and say, tell me, what is it that got you to call today about X? So about whatever it is that they said that they were calling for. So try to find out what their emotional pain is, what their personal motivator is, their decision-making factor that got them to finally decide to call today to buy, the widget that you have or the service that you're providing. What is it that made them do that?
And that nugget you just shared right there, I think that's huge. And that's one of those things where when I first heard that thing that blew my mind a little bit, that it's so important to have that empathy and to ask those questions, and that almost most important question of what got you into action today? Why are we talking today? What brought you to me today? And you always hear about that with the selling, that the script and the canned stuff is important, but what's most important is the listening, because these people calling will almost tell you how to sell to them, right? They'll tell you what their problem is and they'll tell you what they want. And if you just sit back and listen, they'll do most of the work for you, it seems.
Yeah, that's true. It's all you really have to do is sit back and have your listening ears on and really pay close attention to what they're saying and the words and the language that they're using, and then ask permission to repeat back to them what you feel like you heard them say. So then they know that you care about them, they can trust you, and they know that you got it right. And if you didn't get it right, it's still okay because you asked permission. And therefore, they will correct you and tell you what the right information is. And then you're going to know what box they go in, what service or product they go in based on that information and that relationship, the relationship building. But quite frankly, the question of asking, tell me, John, what is it that prompted you to give us a call today about wanting to know the price about the ABC product? Question mark, pause, wait for the answer. That question, that emotional pain question, is probably one of the most challenging questions to get client services, customer service, and salespeople to ask, because they all feel like, well, John already told me when he calls and asks the price for the ABC product. And that's not the same thing. It's two different things.
Right. Yeah. It's the what's the price is one thing, but why did you call for the price? And not only why did you call for the price, but why did you call today? Why is it this urgent? I like that a lot, and it really reframes things so that way it's like the person answering and the person calling are now on track to solving the problem together instead of butting heads, instead of fighting for, well, are you going to buy or not? Well, is it this is it this high price or is this low price? Now you're working together to get to that solution. So I like that a lot. And you mentioned a few minutes ago that there might be a little bit of a refining stage where you sit down, you schedule the time, you figure out what some of those screening or qualifying questions might be, and then you try it out. So what sort of a growing pain learning curve process is there here when you try out a script, you test it out, maybe you go through some of those awkward stages to get it really good, to make it where you're asking those right questions. What's that process like of getting the kinks worked out?
I mean, honestly, the first thing is really just diving in and doing it. But before you do that, you can practice. And there's nothing wrong with practicing. And the best way, the absolute best way still today to practice is to role play. Most people do not like to role play. They're very uncomfortable with it. Even the seasoned veterans are very uncomfortable with it and don't feel they should have to do it. But role playing is the single most important strategy that can be used on a regular, ongoing basis to get it right, to get the screening questions right, to get the relationship scripting right, to get right how you sound, and to combat the objections that you might get. So even though you're uncomfortable, it will help you to be an expert at what you're doing every single time. It's just a test drive is all it is. That's the main thing that you can do. And then the next thing is just do it. Just be there, be now, be present, be in the focused present moment, be in a state of readiness, have all your tools in front of you, you've done your practicing, and now get ready to handle those phone calls or to make those phone calls, and just allow yourself to stumble along the way by recognizing when you do stumble, and then go ahead and role play on the stumbling moments so that you can perfect those moments. And then the last thing that you can do is check the laws for your state for recording phone calls first. But as long as you're allowed to record your phone calls, have a habit and behavior of listening to your call recordings. And again, most people, 95%, don't like listening to their call recordings because they don't like to hear their recorded voice, let alone what they said on the phone. But when you can get past that fear and that discomfort and you actually hear your phone call, you are shocked and amazed at what you said because you had no idea you talked the way you do and you said the things that you said. You just had no idea till you actually heard it.
Those are two great pieces of advice, and I agree 100%. As far as that role playing, I'm a computer programmer, Chris, so I'm used to debugging things. I'm used to thinking something's absolutely perfect and then it doesn't work at all. And many times, even though we think it's monotonous, tedious, we have to test out that thing that we created and try to break it. And if we do break it, usually it's just a small flaw and we have to go back and fix it. And so this concept of role playing, of taking it through the test drive, that's huge. And then listening to those call recordings, I can relate to that as well, because in college I took classes on like communications and presenting and things like that, and I wasn't very good, and I still don't think I'm very good in general, but I improved my skill by watching the videotapes of me presenting. And like you said, that they sure were painful at first, but once I got past that little bit of awkwardness, discomfort, and looked at what was actually happening, not what I was thinking in the moment, that was huge. And as you explained that, I mean, what went through my head is it's like when we're on the spot in the moment, trying to scramble for an answer, then our brain's doing it like five different things at once, right? We're focusing on listening to that person. We're kind of constructing that sentence we're trying to say, trying to not sound stupid, and all those things are happening in the moment. And it's like we probably only have a little tiny fraction of our brain focusing on saying the right thing. So when we check back later and we listen to that, we're like, wow, the way that I remember that is drastically different from what's actually happening in the recording, because when I'm observing from the outside, I can totally take it all in. So yeah, you're totally right. And I agree 1,000,000% about role playing and about listening to those call recordings. And as we're beginning to wind down here, I like to hear about like stories and case studies and hearing about the problems that people solve, because I always think that that's kind of fun, right? To hear about if you went into some company and they had no idea about the phone closing, or they weren't doing it quite right, and then you worked your magic and made it better. Do you have anything to share like that, like some sort of success story as far as what you do here?
I mean, we have clients that when they do our training programs and they actually implement what we teach them, so actually implementing it, they can improve their conversion from prospective client to client by 30% just by doing what they're taught to do. But then there's another technique which we call RMFD, and it stands for record, monitor, feedback daily. If if you ask me today what's the single most important thing that I can do as a business owner, regardless of the type of business you're in or the size of the business you're in, or if you're a senior level executive or whatever position you hold, what could you do today to improve conversion in your business immediately? I would tell you RMFD, record, monitor, feedback daily. And so what that means is even before you even take our training class, if you just recorded your phone calls, monitor your phone calls, and give feedback to your team on a daily basis, if you had that step implemented, locked in place forever, it never goes away. It's absolutely impossible to not improve your conversion. And then think if you got the proper training. But if you wanted to improve your conversion right now, you do that one thing. And if you can't record your calls, do mystery calls. Have a system in place where you call in and play prospective customer or client, put together a program like that. I guarantee you will improve your conversion.
I love it. That's great advice. So RMFD, record, monitor, feedback daily. So if you're in a state where you can record those calls, then listen to them and have that feedback so that way you can tell your team what to improve on, even if this is improving 5% a day, even if it's improving incrementally. It's better to listen to what's happening and give the advice on a few pointers, on a few tweaks, versus just leaving things to random chance. Who wants to do that? That sounds like a recipe to me for backsliding. And plus, imagine if you added this proper training on top of things to make things even better. I mean, that sounds amazing. And as you said, even if you're in a state where you can't record the calls, then add something where a few of those calls thrown in are the mystery calls where you're playing prospective client and you get a feel for what it's like on that other end of that. I mean, I think this is something that a lot of companies, businesses need to implement or at least up their game on if they're not already doing it. And I know that we said that you specialize with law firm conversions, but does this work in any niche for any sorts of business, or are there ones where it works better than others, would you say?
It works with all businesses, and we've been doing this for 25 years. It's only the last 5 years that the majority of our clients are law firms, but we still work with mixed businesses as well. And for as long as I've been doing this, it doesn't matter what the business is. It doesn't matter if it's an automotive dealership or the airlines or the medical industry or dental or casinos or home improvement. It's large corporations, Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's the small business owner. It doesn't matter. It's the same principles, the same teaching. Everything is the same. The only thing that's different is the service and the product that you're providing. So it's all the same.
Well, glad to hear it. In the same way that the website that people use is all the same, right? No matter what the industry or the niche is, there are customizations, changes to be made, but still everyone needs a website. Everyone needs the ability to take orders. And in the same way, I completely agree. Everyone needs to have this sort of phone marketing, these phone sales that you're talking about. So you really, I think, whet our appetite here and got us really interested in this whole concept and a lot of really easy things that we can do to up our game and get in the right direction as far as tapping into some of this stuff. So I'm really curious now about what kind of resources you have for us. Like you said, that you have things like classes and other ways to help people out with their phone sales. So what sorts of like websites, books, courses, things like that do you feel like sharing with us today?
I mean, the best way to get started is you can go to our website, and even though it's a law firm website, you can still go there and take this step. So go to that's plural.com. So lawfirmconversions.com, and schedule a free mystery call and debrief. And again, when you go ahead and you click the button to schedule it, there'll be a questionnaire, and it's asking you the firm name and number of lawyers and things like that. Just fill it out as it pertains to your business. Don't worry about that it's geared towards law firms, because we'll still get the information. And go ahead and schedule your mystery call debrief. And what will happen is our mystery call team will do a free prospect mystery call of your business, regardless of the kind of business. And then you'll have a debrief. The senior level executive will have a debrief with Chris Mullins, that's me, over the phone, where I'll play the mystery call for you. You'll tell me what you think, and then I'll give you my thoughts, and I'll tell you exactly to a T what the opportunities were on that mystery call that you can immediately fix yourself. If you decide that you don't want to fix it yourself and you want support and help, we can talk about how we can help you. But you'll definitely walk away with exactly what you need to do to fix any areas of opportunities. So that's what you should do.
Fantastic. I agree. That's what everyone who's listening here right now, if you're serious about your business, if you're serious about the phone, then the place to go is lawfirmconversions.com, and click on the button to schedule that mystery call. And even though it, like Chris said, it asks about law firm specific questions, if you are a law firm, fill that out. If you're not a law firm, then still fill out the questions. But Chris and her team will call we'll do that mystery call, and then they'll record it, and then that way you can meet later and have that debrief and listen in, and maybe even pick up a few things that you may have missed that are happening every single day in your business, where you're leaking sales, where you're missing opportunities, and those can be easily fixed if you just have some of that outside help, some of that test driving, that debugging to get things figured out. So lawfirmconversions.com is the place to go and fill out that form. And that way you can get on track to upping your game and increasing your conversions and getting more out of the phone, because this invention has been around for 150 years plus. It's not going away. People are using this to communicate. And if you're not getting the most out of your phone sales, then your business is not the best that it can be. And this seems to be, from what Chris has told us today, really the low-hanging fruit. It just takes a few tweaks, changes to get more and more sales every day, to get your team dialed in and doing what they need to be doing. So lawfirmconversions.com is the place to go. And any final thoughts and words here, Chris, as we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two things. And so one is, and you want to write this down, is inspect what you expect. So inspect what you expect. So you should write that down. And so, don't make the assumption that because Mary or John have been with you for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, or because you have family members working for you, that everything is perfect and they're stars. It doesn't mean they're doing things deliberately to, turn things into a situation where they're not using your screening questions and they're not using your script. Sometimes people don't realize the habits and behaviors they got, but you need to do your due diligence and inspect what you expect. And the way to do that is mystery calling and or listening to call recordings forever, unless you decide to stop marketing and pull the plug on marketing, and then you would eventually be out of business. So you don't want to do that. But the second thing I want to say, and you should write this down, is when the prospective client or customer calls your office, you have to remember that there are no do-overs. There's no do-overs. You don't get a second chance. One call does it all. The moment you hang up that phone, it's over. Whatever happened on that call is done. You can't fix it. So get it right the first time.
Great. 2 pieces of advice, and I wrote those down myself. Inspect what you expect, and that means never stop checking the feedback. And then there are no do-overs on that prospect call, on those prospect calls. So great advice. I love it. Thanks so much for stopping by, Chris. And we are going to see everyone over at lawfirmconversions.com. I appreciate you. I appreciate your advice, and I appreciate what you've done here for us today. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robert.
Please follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Robert Plank. That's twitter.com/Robert Plank. And while you're adding me, also like Marketer of the Day on Facebook by going to facebook.com/Robert Plank Show.